The sun glittered on the turquoise water as Jack Bennett adjusted his camera, framing the perfect shot. At 32, the Seattle-based photographer had saved for 2 years for this trip with his wife, Olivia. She was a 29-year-old elementary school teacher with a smile that could light up any room. "Do you think we should have told someone else about this little detour?" Olivia asked, adjusting her straw hat as their small boat rocked gently on the waves. The captain, a local man named Guyan, had promised to take them to a reef rarely visited by tourists. "Relax, honey. We sent our location to Lisa this morning, remember?" Jack replied, stowing his camera in a waterproof backpack. Lisa, Olivia's sister, was their emergency contact for the trip. The once clear sky was beginning to gather a few clouds on the horizon. Guyan watched them with a flicker of concern but said nothing. They had paid generously for this private excursion, and he didn't want to disappoint them. "We are arriving," Guyan announced after nearly an hour. "This place, very special. Not many tourists know." Jack and Olivia exchanged a knowing glance. Their 10th wedding anniversary deserved something extraordinary. Far from the well-trodden path, as they prepared to snorkel, they failed to notice the clouds multiplying, or the wind that was steadily picking up. March 15, 2018 would be remembered as the last day anyone saw Jack and Olivia Bennett alive. "When was the last time you spoke with them?" Officer Putu Adanjana of the Bali police asked, scribbling in his small notebook. Lisa Weber, her eyes red from a combination of tears and jet lag, held up her phone. "They sent me this location at 9:32 in the morning. Then, nothing. They were supposed to be back at the hotel that afternoon." The hotel had reported their absence after they failed to return for 2 consecutive nights. Their room was untouched, passports, clothes, and personal belongings all just as they had left them. "And this, Wayan?" asked Robert Weber, Lisa's husband. "Have you found him?" Officer Adanjana shook his head. "We are searching for all registered captains with that name, but it is very common in Bali." Without a last name or a company to go on, the search began immediately. Rescue helicopters scoured the area for days. Local fishermen joined in with their boats. The American embassy sent specialized personnel. They found the wreckage of a small wooden boat near a reef about 30 kilometers from the coast, but there was no sign of its 3 occupants. 3 weeks later, with resources dwindling and no new leads, the search was scaled back. The authorities concluded they had likely been caught in one of the sudden violent storms common for that time of year. Lisa refused to accept it. "My sister is an excellent swimmer, so is Jack. If the boat went down, they would have tried to swim to an island." "Mrs. Weber," the officer replied patiently, "there are many treacherous currents in these waters. And even if they did make it, there are dozens of small, uninhabited islands in this region, without fresh water or food." The Bennett and Weber families offered a $100,000 reward for any information. They hired private investigators. They appeared on television shows. But as the months turned into a year, hope began to fade. A year after their disappearance, a Washington court officially declared Jack and Olivia Bennett deceased. Lisa never sold the couple's house in Seattle. "Just in case," she would always say, though no one else in the family dared mention the possibility of their return. Until 5 years later. On April 23, 2023, her phone rang at 3:14 in the morning. "Hello?" she answered, her voice thick with sleep. There was a crackle of static, then a ragged breath. "Who is this?" Lisa insisted. And then she heard it, a barely audible whisper, a voice that seemed to travel from another world, but one she would recognize anywhere. "Help!" Before she could respond, the line went dead. Rob, wake up!" Lisa shook her husband so hard she nearly knocked him out of bed. It was her, Rob. It was Olivia. Robert sat up, disoriented, rubbing his eyes. What time is it? What are you talking about? I just got a call. It was her voice, I'm sure of it. Lisa's hands trembled as she tried to redial the number only to get an error message. I can't get through. Lisa, honey. Robert pulled her into a gentle embrace. This wasn't the first time. On the first anniversary of the disappearance, Lisa had sworn she heard her sister's voice in a shopping mall. 6 months after that, she thought she saw her in a restaurant. Her therapist called it a manifestation of unresolved grief. No, this was different, Lisa insisted, pulling away. I'm calling the FBI. The next morning, Special Agent Marcus Dawson listened patiently in the Webers' living room. At 48, he'd handled enough missing persons cases to have developed a healthy skepticism. Mrs. Weber, I understand your conviction, but without a recording of the call, you can trace it, can't you? You have the technology. Dawson gave a cautious nod. We would need a court order, and frankly, after 5 years and an official declaration of death. Agent Dawson, Robert interrupted, my sister-in-law and her husband were declared dead because there was no other explanation. If there is even the slightest chance. Something in the family's raw sincerity moved Dawson. I'll make some calls, off the record, but I'm not promising anything. 3 days later, Dawson returned, his expression unreadable. The call came from a communications satellite that covers the Indian Ocean. The signal originated somewhere within a 200-kilometer radius of these coordinates. He handed Lisa a slip of paper. Lisa took it, her hands shaking. What does this mean? It means someone used a satellite phone in a remote region of the Indian Ocean to call you. It could be anyone. But why would they call me? Why would they whisper help? Lisa stood up, a sudden surge of energy coursing through her. I'm going there. Lisa, that's an archipelago with hundreds of islands, many of them uninhabited, Dawson warned. I don't care, I'll hire a boat, a plane, whatever it takes. Robert looked at his wife, then at the agent. Are there any inhabited islands near those coordinates? Dawson consulted his notes. There's a small settlement on Pulau Tikus, an island controlled by Indonesia, population under 300, no airport, just a small fishing pier. Then we'll start there, Robert decided, surprising both Lisa and the agent. The humid heat hit Lisa like a physical wall as she stepped off the small boat that had carried them from Sumatra to Pulau Tikus, though she had been to Bali 5 years earlier during the initial search. She was not prepared for the intensity of the tropical climate. The island was smaller than she had imagined. A handful of wooden houses on stilts, a tiny market, and fishing boats bobbing at the pier. The locals watched them with open curiosity. Western visitors were a rarity. Good morning, Robert said in Indonesian, one of the few phrases he had learned on the long journey. Does anyone speak English? An older man with skin weathered by the sun stepped forward. I speak little English. What you look for here? Lisa held out the photograph of Jack and Olivia that she always carried. My sister and her husband. They disappeared 5 years ago near Bali. We think they might be on an island in this region. The man studied the photo without a flicker of recognition. He called over other locals who gathered to look at the picture, shaking their heads. No see them here, the man confirmed. Why you think they are close? Lisa explained about the phone call, the old man translating for the others. She noticed some of them exchange meaningful glances. What is it? She asked. Do you know something? After a brief discussion in their local tongue, the man turned back to them. There is island, 2 hours by boat. Nobody lived there. Official. But fishermen, they see lights some nights. They say, spirits. But could you take us there? Lisa interrupted, her heart pounding. The man shook his head emphatically. No go there. Dangerous water. Many rocks. We'll pay you well, Robert insisted, showing a thick wad of Indonesian rupiah. The old fisherman looked at the money, then at his companions, and finally back at the photo of Olivia and Jack. With a sigh of resignation, he nodded. Tomorrow, early. Today's storm is coming. That night, as they waited in the island's only available room, Lisa couldn't sleep. Through the open window, she watched the stars, impossibly bright in a sky free of light pollution. 5 years, she whispered. How could they have survived for 5 years? Robert wrapped his arms around her from behind. We don't know what happened, Lisa. Maybe they were rescued by a local. Maybe they've been trying to get a message out all this time. What if it's not her? What if this is all just a waste of time? Her voice broke. Then at least we'll have tried, Robert answered, kissing her hair, and we can finally move on. What neither of them could imagine was that less than 30 kilometers away, on an island that didn't appear on most maps, someone else was watching that same starry sky, remembering a life that felt like it belonged to another person, in another time. The dawn broke clear and calm, contradicting the previous day's forecast. Lisa took it as a good omen as they boarded the small fishing boat. The old Indonesian who had introduced himself as Pak Guntur seemed less convinced. Sea is calm now, tricky later, he muttered, starting the engine. 2 hours, no more time there, we come back before noon. The boat pulled away from the small pier, leaving Pulau Tikus behind. Lisa stared impatiently at the horizon, as if she could will their destination into existence. Robert, more pragmatic, checked his handheld GPS against the coordinates Agent Dawson had given them. According to this, we're heading to the right spot, he confirmed. Whatever we find there, Lisa said, her voice filled with a resolve that left no room for doubt. We'll find answers. After nearly 2 hours, Pak Guntur slowed the engine. In the distance, an island emerged from the morning mist. A mound of intense green ringed by white beaches and rocky formations that stretched under the water like menacing fingers. Isla Hantu, Guntur announced. Ghost Island. Hard to get close, rocks break boats. He navigated carefully, using his local knowledge to find a channel through the reefs. Finally, about 100 meters from shore, he dropped anchor. Cannot go closer, you swim. Lisa and Robert exchanged a look. They had anticipated this and brought a small inflatable raft with their waterproof pack of supplies. We'll be back in 3 hours, Robert assured him as they deployed the raft. Pak Guntur shook his head. I wait 2 hours, then tide changes. Very dangerous here. There was no room to negotiate. The couple nodded in understanding. Paddling to shore was harder than they'd expected. The current tried to pull them toward the rocks, and the sun, now high in the sky, beat down relentlessly. By the time they reached the beach, they were soaked in a mixture of sweat and seawater. The island seemed deserted. Dense tropical vegetation, pristine beaches, and the constant sound of waves crashing against rock. There were no obvious signs of human life. Where do we start? Robert asked, pulling out his compass. If someone is living here, they'd need fresh water, Lisa reasoned. Let's look for a stream or a spring. They pushed into the jungle, machete in hand, hacking a path through the undergrowth. The heat was suffocating under the canopy, and insects buzzed incessantly around them. After half an hour, they discovered a faint trail, barely visible in the foliage. Someone's been through here, Robert said, pointing to branches that had been intentionally cut. And recently, the trail led them into a clearing where a stream of crystal-clear water trickled down from the island's central hills. And there, beside the stream, they found the first concrete proof. A crude structure, half hut, half shelter, built from logs, palm fronds, and what looked like the wreckage of a boat. Hello, Lisa called out, her voice trembling. "Is anyone here?" Silence, broken only by the calls of tropical birds. They approached the structure cautiously. The door, made of uneven planks, was slightly ajar. Robert pushed it open, revealing a surprisingly organized interior. A raised bed made of bamboo, makeshift utensils, even shelves carved into the wall holding small objects. Lisa stepped inside, her eyes taking in every detail with a rising sense of hope. In a corner, a piece of fabric caught her eye, something out of place in the primitive setting. She picked it up with trembling hands, recognizing it instantly. A blue silk scarf patterned with tiny white anchors. It had been her gift to Olivia before the trip to Bali. "Rob," her voice cracked as she showed him the scarf. "It's hers. I'm sure of it." Robert examined the fabric, nodding slowly. "Someone has been living here. And recently." He pointed to a small fire pit outside. "These embers are still warm." A rustle in the vegetation put them on high alert. They both spun toward the sound. "Olivia?" Lisa called, stepping toward the undergrowth. "Jack, it's us, Lisa and Robert. Don't be afraid." The movement in the bushes intensified, and then a figure emerged into the light of the clearing. It wasn't Olivia, and it wasn't Jack. It was a middle-aged local man, his clothes tattered, his expression one of pure alarm. "Who? You?" he asked in broken English, holding a homemade harpoon defensively. "What you want here?" "We're searching for my sister and her husband," Lisa explained, holding out the photograph. "They vanished 5 years ago. We believe they might be on this island." The man studied the image with an unreadable expression. Then his gaze fell to the handkerchief Lisa was still holding, and his face changed. "You should go," he said finally, his tone urgent. "Not safe here." "Have you seen them?" Robert insisted. "Please, it's very important to us." The man seemed to wrestle with an internal conflict before answering. "I not see, but—" He hesitated, glancing nervously toward the dense vegetation behind him. "But what?" Lisa pressed. "Island not just mine. Others control south part. Dangerous people, they have—" He searched for the right word. "Prisoners." A shiver traced a path down Lisa's spine. "Prisoners? Who are they? What are they doing here?" "Smugglers. Use island to hide things, people. I keep distance. They let me live." "Could you take us there?" Robert asked. The man shook his head emphatically. "Very dangerous. They have weapons. You will die." "We have to try," Lisa insisted. "If my sister is there—" Their conversation was cut short by a distant whistle that seemed to come from the sea. The man visibly tensed. "Big boat coming. You hide. Quick." Without giving them time to protest, he pushed them toward his hut, then toward a trapdoor in the floor they hadn't noticed before. Beneath it was a cramped space, likely his shelter during storms. "Stay quiet. No noise," he ordered before closing the trapdoor over them. In the suffocating darkness of the hideout, Lisa and Robert heard footsteps above their heads. Male voices exchanged words in a language they didn't recognize. And then, a scream that chilled her blood. The minutes in that suffocating space stretched into an eternity for Lisa and Robert. The space was so tight they could barely move, and the air grew heavier with each breath. Above them, the voices continued, occasionally rising in what sounded like heated arguments. "What do you think is happening?" Lisa whispered so quietly Robert could barely hear her. "I don't know," he replied in the same hushed tone. "But that scream—" They both fell silent as they heard footsteps approaching the hut again. Someone entered, moved objects around, and then all was quiet. They waited several more minutes until the trapdoor was suddenly flung open, revealing the islander's tense face. "They are gone for now," he informed them, helping them out. "But they will be back soon. You must leave." What happened? Robert asked. Who screamed? The man averted his gaze. They punish someone. Always the same. Did you see who it was? Lisa insisted, a knot tightening in her throat. Woman, light hair, I not see face well. Lisa felt her legs threaten to give way. Robert steadied her. Please, she pleaded. We need to know if it's my sister. You have to help us. The islander shook his head, but his expression softened slightly. My name is Surya. I fisherman from Sumatra. My boat, it sank here 3 years ago. They let me live if I not interfere. Surya, Robert said, we understand your situation. But if there are hostages, innocent people suffering, we have to do something. Surya looked at them for a long moment, sizing them up. Finally, he nodded. You go back to beach now. Your boat wait. I will investigate. Look for woman with light hair. Come back to Pilaticus tomorrow with information. It was the best they could hope for. With time running out and no weapons or plan, confronting a group of armed smugglers would be suicide. Upon returning to the beach, they found Pak Guntur waiting for them nervously. On the horizon, dark clouds were beginning to gather. Quickly, the old fisherman shouted. Storm is coming. During the journey back, the sea churned violently, as if nature itself wanted to prevent their departure. Waves crashed against the small vessel, drenching them in salt water. Lisa clung to the newfound hope, the handkerchief, the woman with fair hair, the possibility that after 5 years, Olivia might still be alive. Back on Pilaticus, they took refuge in the same room as the night before. The storm unleashed its full fury on the small island, a constant reminder of what might have happened 5 years ago in Bali. We should contact Dawson, Robert suggested as he dried his satellite phone, which was miraculously unharmed. If there's a smuggling operation and potential hostages, the authorities need to be involved. Lisa nodded distractedly, her mind still on that island. What if it's her, Rob? What if she's been a captive all these years? How could we have just left her? We didn't leave her, he answered firmly. You never stopped looking, and now we're closer than we've ever been. Communicating with the FBI was difficult due to the storm, but they finally managed to relay the essential information. Dawson promised to alert the Indonesian authorities, though he warned that a response might not be immediate given the remote location. Stay off that island, he ordered. If there are really armed criminals there, any attempt to approach could endanger your lives and the lives of any potential hostages. The night was endless. Lisa barely slept, and when she did, nightmares of her sister jolted her awake. The next morning, the storm had subsided, leaving behind a clear sky that contrasted sharply with the anxiety they felt. They waited for Surya all day, asking every fisherman returning to the dock if they had seen him. No one had any news. Maybe the storm delayed him, Robert suggested, trying to remain optimistic. As the sun began to set, their worry curdled into desperation. What if Surya had been discovered? Or what if the storm had damaged his boat? We can't wait any longer, Lisa decided finally. We have to go back to that island. The authorities told us to wait, Robert reminded her, though without much conviction. What if they're too late? What if the smugglers move the hostages now that they know someone is looking? Finding someone to take them proved impossible. No fisherman wanted to go near Isla Hantu, Ghost Island, especially after the storm. The local superstition about evil spirits inhabiting the island seemed to have intensified. We'll rent a boat ourselves, Lisa declared, heading toward the small dock where a few vessels were moored. Lisa, we don't know how to navigate these waters, Robert protested, following her. It's too dangerous. What's more dangerous is doing nothing. As they argued, a familiar figure appeared at the end of the dock. Pak Guntur walking slowly toward them with a grave expression. Have you seen Surya? Lisa asked immediately. The old fisherman shook his head. No one returned from Ghost Island today. He paused, looking at them intently. But I find this in my boat this morning. From his pocket, he pulled out a small object and handed it to Lisa. It was a silver ring set with a small blue stone. Olivia's engagement ring, the one Jack had given her 7 years before they disappeared. "Where did you find it?" Lisa asked, her voice trembling. "In my boat. Someone leave it during the night." Lisa and Robert exchanged a look. This was the message they had been waiting for, the confirmation they needed. "We have to go," Lisa said, clenching the ring in her fist. "Now!" Pak Gunter sighed deeply like a man accepting an inevitable fate. "I will take you, but not in daylight. At night. Less danger." While they waited for nightfall, Lisa contacted Dawson again, telling him about the ring and their plan. "For God's sake, don't do this," the agent pleaded. "The Indonesian authorities are mobilizing a special unit, but they need time to reach that remote area. If you interfere, you could cause a tragedy." "There's already been a tragedy, Agent Dawson," Lisa replied with determination. "My sister has been living a nightmare for 5 years. I won't wait another day." Darkness fell over Pelodicus like a protective cloak, armed with little more than a flashlight and their satellite phones. Lisa and Robert boarded Pak Guntur's small boat. The old fisherman had charted an alternative route, longer but one that avoided the most dangerous reefs. The night sea was a black mirror reflecting the stars. With no moon, the darkness was almost complete, broken only by the weak glow of the flashlight at the bow. "Ghost Island has many caves on east side," Gunter explained in a low voice. "Smugglers use them to hide things, and people we will approach from there, less guarded." After nearly 3 hours of navigation, the island's silhouette appeared as a denser shadow against the starlit horizon. Gunter killed the engine, opting to row to reduce the noise. "From here you are alone," he whispered when they were about 50 meters from a small rocky cove. "I will wait for 2 hours if you do not return." He left the sentence unfinished, but its meaning was clear. With water up to their waists, Lisa and Robert waded toward the shore, guided by the dim light of their partially covered flashlight. The plan was simple and desperate. Find the caves, locate the hostages, and if Olivia was among them, try to communicate with her without alerting her captors. What they didn't know was that from a nearby cliff, someone was already watching them through night vision binoculars, and that their arrival was no surprise at all. The path leading up from the beach was treacherous in the dark. Hidden roots and loose rocks threatened every step as Lisa and Robert moved slowly, guided by the nearly covered flashlight and the crude map Guntur had drawn in the sand before they left. According to Guntur, the cave should be about 200 meters along the coastline, Robert whispered, checking his phone's compass. Lisa nodded silently, her senses on high alert, attuned to every sound of the nocturnal jungle. The chirping of insects and the distant crash of waves masked any noise they might make, but also any sound that might warn them of danger. After 20 minutes of careful progress, the terrain began to slope downward. The vegetation thinned, revealing a rocky area leading to sea-eroded limestone formations. There, among the shadows, they could make out several dark openings. "The caves," Lisa murmured, surveying the multiple entrances. "How will we know which one to search?" Robert pointed toward one of the larger caves. "Look!" Almost imperceptible from their position, a faint orange glow emanated from within, suggesting some form of artificial light. With extreme caution, they approached, crouching behind rocks to stay hidden. The entrance, partially concealed by vines, led into a natural tunnel that descended into the island's interior. The glow intensified as they advanced, along with the murmur of voices. They stopped at a bend in the tunnel from where they could peer around without being seen. The tunnel opened into a large cavern illuminated by oil lamps and a few LED spotlights powered by portable generators. The space had been converted into a base of operations. Boxes of supplies were stacked against the walls, communication equipment sat on a table, and a few hammocks were slung in one corner. Three men were talking around an improvised table where a maritime chart was spread out. They were speaking a language Robert recognized as Tagalog, suggesting they were likely Filipino. "I don't see any hostages," Lisa whispered, scanning every corner of the cavern. "They must be in another section," Robert replied. "We have to keep looking." They backed away silently and chose to explore a nearby entrance. This cave was narrower and descended steeply. The air grew damper and colder as they went, and they soon noticed the walls were reinforced with wooden beams like a mine shaft. At the bottom of the descent, they found a crude door made of planks, secured with a chain and padlock. A faint light seeped through the cracks. Lisa crept to the door and peered through one of the gaps. What she saw made her blood run cold. In a small, confined space, 5 people, 3 women and 2 men, lay on thin mats. They all looked gaunt, their clothes in tatters. One of the women lying in a corner had dirty, matted blonde hair. "I think I see her," Lisa whispered, her heart hammering in her chest. "Rob, I think it's her." Robert gently moved her aside to look for himself. "We can't be sure from this distance, in this light. We have to open this door." They examined the padlock. It was old and rusted but still solid. Robert pulled a small multi-tool from his backpack that he had brought as a precaution. "I'll try to force it," he said, selecting the most suitable attachment. "You watch the tunnel." While Robert worked on the lock, Lisa kept her eyes fixed on the tunnel they had come from, listening for any sound that might signal someone's approach. The seconds stretched into an eternity. Every tiny metallic click from Robert's work on the lock seemed to magnify in the cave's silence. "Almost got it," he muttered, just as a sudden snap indicated the mechanism had given way. With extreme care, they removed the chain and pushed the door, which opened with a groan that sounded deafening to their ears. The people inside started looking up at them with a mixture of fear and confusion. "Olivia?" Lisa called in a low voice, stepping toward the blonde woman. "Olivia Bennett?" The woman looked up slowly, as if the simple act of moving her head required a supreme effort. Her eyes, sunken deep within a gaunt face, slowly found focus on Lisa. "Lisa." The name was a ragged whisper, a voice hoarse from disuse or perhaps from too much screaming. "Are you real?" Lisa knelt beside her, tears streaming freely down her face. "Yes, it's me. We've come to get you out of here." Olivia blinked several times as if trying to will away a hallucination. She reached out a trembling hand to touch her sister's face. Her fingers, calloused and grimy, left a faint trail on Lisa's tear-streaked cheek. "Jack," Olivia murmured, her gaze drifting past Lisa to Robert. "Where is Jack?" A worried look passed between Lisa and Robert. "Isn't he with you?" Lisa asked. Olivia shook her head weakly. "They separated us a long time ago. Her voice fractured. "He tried to escape." "Who are these people?" Robert asked, gesturing to the other captives who watched the reunion with expressions torn between hope and fear. "Castaways," Olivia explained. "Like us. They use us to work, build, carry." "Who are they?" Robert pressed, helping one of the other women to sit up. "The men who keep you here. Traffickers. Guns, drugs, whatever. This island is their meeting point." Lisa helped Olivia to her feet, but her legs gave way immediately. 5 years of captivity had wasted her body to an unimaginable degree. "We have to get everyone out of here," Robert decided. "Our boat can take us back to Pelodicus, and from there, we can't leave," Olivia interrupted with sudden urgency. "Not without Jack." "Do you know where he is?" Lisa asked. West side, another cave. They punish him there for trying to communicate. A look of understanding dawned on her emaciated face. The call. It worked. Lisa nodded, squeezing her sister's hand. That's how we found you. I got your call. It was you. Who left the ring on Gunter's boat? Robert asked. Olivia shook her head, confused. Ring? No, I haven't had my ring since... The sound of approaching footsteps in the tunnel cut the conversation short. Robert quickly switched off the flashlight, plunging the cell into near darkness. Someone's coming, he whispered. Everyone be still. The footsteps stopped just outside the now open gate. A flashlight beam swept across the interior, illuminating the prisoners and their unexpected visitors. I knew you would come, a male voice said in heavily accented English. So predictable. The figure stepped into the cell, followed by two armed men. To Lisa and Robert's astonishment, it was not one of the Filipinos they had seen earlier, but Surya, the fisherman they had met the day before. Surya! Lisa stared in disbelief. What are you doing here? The man gave a humorless smile. My name is not Surya, and I am no simple castaway. He gestured to his companions, and they raised their weapons at the group. I am the one who decides who lives and who dies on this island. You put the ring on the boat, Robert realized. You set a trap for us. We needed to know who else was aware of our operation, the man confirmed, and you led me straight to your contact in the FBI. Very helpful. Olivia clung to Lisa, trembling. It's him. He's the one who killed Wyan, our captain in Bali, the one who captured us. The false Surya shrugged. Business is business, and now we have new guests. He looked at the guards. Take them all to the ship. This island is no longer secure. What about Jack Bennett? One of the guards asked in Indonesian, a language Robert only partially understood. He comes too. He can still be useful, Razak replied, then turned back to Lisa and Robert. Your government will pay a great deal to have you back alive, don't you think? As they were forced to their feet and herded into the tunnel, Lisa kept Olivia close, whispering words of encouragement. Robert, desperately assessing their options, noticed something the others seemed to have missed. One of the captives, an Asian man, had managed to palm the multi-tool Robert had dropped when they were separated. The group moved slowly through the ascending tunnel, the weakened captives stumbling in the darkness. As they emerged into the starry night, they saw a ship, considerably larger than Pak Guntur's launch, anchored just off the coast. Move! One of the guards ordered, shoving a woman who was lagging behind. It was then that Robert saw another figure being escorted from a different direction. A tall, thin man with a matted beard and the same weakened appearance as the other captives. Even in this state, he recognized him immediately. Jack! Olivia cried out, trying to run to him, but a guard held her back. Jack Bennett looked up, his eyes flaring with recognition as he saw his wife, and then Lisa and Robert. A storm of emotions crossed his face: surprise, relief, fear. As the group was forced down toward the beach, none of their captors noticed the small, blinking light in Robert's pocket. The emergency beacon on his satellite phone, activated just before they were discovered, was continuously transmitting their exact coordinates to Agent Dawson and the Indonesian authorities. The only question was whether help would arrive in time. The march to the beach was slow and torturous. The captives, weakened by years of malnutrition and abuse, stumbled constantly on the uneven ground. Olivia leaned heavily on Lisa while Jack was shoved roughly every time his faltering steps slowed the group. The false Surya, who his men now addressed as Razak, walked ahead, occasionally consulting a device that looked like a portable radar. His nervousness was plain in the way he hurried everyone along, casting frequent glances toward the horizon. They're scared, Robert whispered to Lisa when the guards weren't listening. Something spooked them. Lisa gave an almost imperceptible nod. She hoped it was the signal Robert had activated, but didn't dare say it aloud. Upon reaching the beach, they saw the ship was even larger than it appeared from a distance. A cargo vessel of about 60 feet, its name painted over, flying no identifiable flag. "Get on," Razak ordered, pointing to a small launch that would ferry them to the anchored ship. "Quickly!" As the captives were forced into the launch, Jack managed to get close to Robert. His eyes, though sunken, held a surprising intensity. "Phone. Satellite," he murmured, so low Robert could barely hear. "You made contact?" Robert nodded slightly. "Emergency signals active. Authorities are alerted." A spark of hope lit Jack's face. He turned toward Olivia, who was clinging to Lisa as if afraid they would be torn apart again at any moment. "Leave," he whispered, using the pet name he had always called her. "Just hold on a little longer." Olivia looked at him, her eyes welling with tears. After 5 years of separate captivity, to finally be together, even like this, felt like a cruel miracle. The launch was too small to carry everyone at once, so Razak decided on 2 trips. "The women first," he ordered, selecting Olivia, Lisa, and the other 2 female captives. "No!" Olivia protested, clutching at Jack. "Don't separate us again!" A guard tore her brutally from her husband's arms, pushing her toward the launch. "Be calm," Razak told her with false kindness. "It's just a short ride. You'll be reunited with your husband on the big ship." As the launch motored away toward the main vessel, Jack and Robert exchanged a look. They both knew that if they were taken aboard that ship, their chances of rescue would plummet. "We have to do something," Jack muttered. "The Asian man," Robert replied in the same low tone. "He has my tool." Jack nodded almost imperceptibly, shifting slightly to communicate with the man in question. What the guards didn't know was that after 5 years together in captivity, the prisoners had developed subtle ways of communicating. The launch returned to the beach 15 minutes later. Razak remained on the main ship, leaving 2 guards to escort the second group. "Now you!" one of them ordered, gesturing with his weapon. As they climbed into the launch, Robert noticed the Asian captive, whom the others called Kenji, position himself strategically near the guard operating the motor. Jack, despite his weakness, placed himself next to the other guard. The launch pushed off from the shore, heading into the dark water. The main ship bobbed about 200 yards away, its lights revealing figures moving on deck. Robert could just make out Lisa and Olivia being led below. When they were about halfway there, a flicker on the horizon caught Robert's attention. For an instant, he thought he saw lights moving at high speed across the water, but they vanished so quickly he might have imagined it. The guard by the motor seemed to notice it too, because he straightened suddenly, squinting into the darkness. That moment of distraction was all Kenji needed. With a movement surprisingly swift for someone in his condition, Kenji used the multi-tool to strike the guard at a vulnerable point on his neck. The man collapsed without a sound, slumping over the motor and accidentally killing the engine. The second guard reacted instantly, but Jack, despite his weakness, lunged at him. The launch rocked dangerously as they grappled. The guard's weapon discharged, the sound echoing over the water like a thunderclap. Robert joined the fray, striking the guard with all his strength. Between the 3 captives, they managed to overpower the man, though not without a cost. Jack had taken a severe blow to the head and was bleeding profusely. "Are you all right?" Robert asked, helping him sit up. "I've been worse," Jack replied with a grimace that was meant to be a smile. "We have to get to the ship, Olivia. First, we deal with these 2. Kenji pointed out in limited but understandable English. The unconscious guard was beginning to stir. Using rope from the launch itself, they bound the guards. Kenji, who turned out to be a Japanese fisherman captured 3 years prior, managed to restart the motor. "To the ship?" he asked, pointing toward the larger vessel where Razak and his men, alerted by the gunshot, were moving frantically. Robert hesitated. Heading straight for them would be suicide, but abandoning Lisa and Olivia was not an option. It was then that the lights he had glimpsed before reappeared, this time clearly visible. Two speedboats were approaching from the east, moving fast with their lights off. "I think that's the cavalry," Robert said, a wave of relief washing over him. "Agent Dawson." On the main ship, the activity intensified. Razak had also spotted the boats and was shouting orders. Some of his men were dragging the women back on deck, using them as human shields. "There!" Jack exclaimed, pointing toward Olivia, clearly visible under the ship's lights. Kenji steered the launch toward the opposite side of the ship, trying to approach undetected while Razak's attention was fixed on the rapidly closing boats. The authorities' boats suddenly switched on powerful searchlights, bathing the smuggler's ship in brilliant white. A magnified voice boomed across the water. "Attention! Indonesian Maritime Police, you are surrounded! Surrender your weapons!" The response was immediate, a volley of gunfire from the ship toward the patrol boats. The exchange turned the quiet night into a chaos of muzzle flashes and deafening reports. Taking advantage of the confusion, Kenji skillfully maneuvered their small boat to a blind spot on the ship. Jack, despite his wound, was the first to scramble up the rope ladder hanging from the side. "Be careful," Robert warned, following close behind. "They're armed and desperate." Reaching the deck, they found a scene of total confusion. Most of the smugglers were at the bow, trading fire with the patrols. Robert glimpsed Lisa and Olivia huddled behind some containers with the other captives. "Over here!" he called out in a low voice, catching Lisa's attention. Her eyes lit up when she saw him. She touched Olivia's shoulder, pointing to where Jack and Robert stood. The reunion was silent but intense. Olivia, seeing Jack bloodied but alive, reached a hand toward him in a gesture that held 5 years of separation and longing. "We have to get out of here," Robert urged. "Our launch is on the east side." They began moving stealthily toward the stern, helping the other captives along. They were only a few feet from the ladder when a figure emerged from the shadows, blocking their path. "Did you really think it would be that easy?" Razak sneered, a gun in his hand aimed directly at them. "It's over, Razak," Robert said, placing himself protectively in front of the others. "The authorities are here. There's no escape." "There's always an escape," Razak replied with a taut smile. "And you are my ticket out." The gunfire at the bow was intensifying. Indonesian special forces were now boarding the ship. It was a matter of minutes, maybe seconds, before they reached the stern. "You," Razak said, leveling his gun at Jack. 5 years of trying to escape. 5 years you've been a thorn in my side. I should have finished you long ago." Razak's voice was a low growl. Jack held his defiant gaze, though he could barely remain on his feet. "You should have." Razak raised his weapon, aiming it squarely at Jack's head. Olivia screamed, trying to throw herself between them, but Lisa held her fast. What happened next unfolded in a matter of seconds. Kenji, who had silently climbed the ladder, launched himself at Razak from behind. The gun went off, the bullet grazing Jack's shoulder. Both men crashed to the deck, grappling for control of the weapon. Robert joined the fray, trying to wrench the gun from Razak's grip. In the midst of the chaos, the weapon fired again. Razak went still, an expression of pure shock frozen on his face. The bullet had found his own chest. "Police! Nobody move!" a voice shouted in Indonesian. A team of Special Forces officers swarmed onto the stern. "Hands up! We're hostages!" Lisa yelled in English. "Americans, we need medical help!" The next few minutes were a whirlwind of activity. The officers secured the area, confirmed their identities, and began administering medical aid to Jack and the other captives. The firefight at the bow had ended. The remaining smugglers had surrendered. On one of the patrol boats, Agent Dawson waited, his anxiety a knot in his stomach. When he finally saw Lisa and Robert being escorted toward the vessel, with Olivia holding Jack's hand as paramedics tended to him, a smile of pure relief spread across his face. "They did it," he murmured, still in disbelief at the outcome of this seemingly impossible mission. As the boats pulled away from the island that had been a prison for so many, Olivia looked back one last time. In the darkness, Hantu Island looked like just another piece of land in the vast ocean, its secrets and horrors hidden beneath a veil of tropical beauty. "It's over," Jack whispered, his hand weakly squeezing hers. "We're going home." The Jakarta Military Hospital buzzed with activity as doctors attended to the survivors from Hantu Island. Jack Bennett, a bandage wrapped around his head and an IV drip in his arm, stared out his window at the city lights twinkling beneath the night sky. After 5 years of captivity, the sight of a modern metropolis was almost overwhelming. "How are you feeling?" Olivia asked, entering the room with a glass of water. Though she was a patient herself, she insisted on visiting Jack constantly, as if she feared he might vanish if she let him out of her sight. "Like I've woken up from a nightmare that never ended," he answered, reaching a hand out to her. Even that simple gesture felt like a miracle after so much time apart. Olivia sat on the edge of his bed, lacing her fingers through his. The doctors had said they both suffered from severe malnutrition, multiple vitamin deficiencies and post-traumatic stress, but that physically they would recover with time. "Lisa and Robert are with the American ambassador," Olivia reported. "They're fast-tracking all the paperwork to get us home." "Home," Jack repeated, savoring the word. "Sometimes I thought I'd never see Seattle again." A soft knock on the door interrupted them. Agent Dawson entered, accompanied by a high-ranking Indonesian officer. "Mr. and Mrs. Bennett," Dawson greeted them with a tired but satisfied smile. "This is Colonel Santoso. He led the rescue operation." The colonel inclined his head respectfully. "It is an honor to finally meet you. You have shown extraordinary courage." "You're the brave ones," Jack replied. "We were just trying to survive." "And you did so admirably," Santoso assured them. "But we've come because we need your help to complete the case file." Olivia squeezed Jack's hand, a shadow of concern crossing her face. "What do you need to know?" "We've pieced most of it together," Dawson explained, pulling out a small notebook. "We know that on March 15th, 2018, you took a boat tour from Bali with a local captain named Wayan, who turned out to be more than just a captain," Jack added bitterly. "He was part of a human trafficking ring. He led us straight into waters controlled by Razak and his crew." Santoso nodded. "We have fully identified Razak as Ibrahim Kamal, a Malaysian pirate wanted in 5 countries for arms, drug, and human trafficking. His operation used Hantu Island as a transit point, using shipwreck survivors and kidnapped tourists as forced labor." "Wayan faked engine trouble," Olivia recalled, her gaze lost in the past. "When Razak showed up, he acted like he was there to help us, but then—" Her voice broke. Jack continued for her. "They killed Wayan right in front of us. I guess to eliminate a witness, or maybe it was some internal dispute. They took us to the island where there were already other captives." "What we don't understand," Dawson interjected, "is how you managed to make that phone call after 5 years. It's what allowed us to find you." Olivia and Jack exchanged a look. "Kenji," they said in unison. "The Japanese fisherman?" Santoso asked, consulting his notes. Jack nodded. "Kenji Tanaka. He was captured 3 years after us. He was an electronics engineer before he took up fishing. Over months, he managed to steal tiny components from Razak's communication equipment. He built a rudimentary transmitter that could briefly connect to the satellite network." We tried to use it several times without success, Olivia added. The signal was too weak, but 2 weeks ago, during a storm, we noticed the reception improved dramatically. The ionosphere, Dawson murmured to himself. Thunderstorms can affect satellite communications, sometimes for the better. Exactly, Jack confirmed. We waited for the next storm. I created a diversion while Olivia tried to make the call. We knew we'd only have seconds before they found us. And it worked, Olivia said with a faint smile. Though it nearly cost Jack his life, they punished him brutally when they found out what we'd done. There's something else we don't understand, Santoso continued. The engagement ring that mysteriously appeared on Pak Gunter's boat. That's still a mystery to us too, Jack admitted. They took my ring on the first day. Olivia kept hers hidden for a while, but eventually Razak found it and took it from her. We believe it was Razak who planted it there to lure us in, Dawson suggested. A way to confirm it was really family looking for you and not undercover agents. Or maybe it was someone else, Olivia mused. There were others on the island, not just the captors and captives we knew. Sometimes we'd see lights in distant areas. We'd hear voices. Santoso made a note. We will investigate that possibility. In the meantime, I have good news. We have located and rescued 11 other captives who were on nearby islands, part of the same trafficking network. We have completely dismantled Razak's operation. And Kenji? Jack asked. He's stable, Dawson replied. His embassy has been notified. He'll be able to return to his family in Japan soon. They've thought he was dead for years. A nurse entered to check Jack's vitals, a discreet signal that the visit should soon conclude. Just one more question, Santoso said before leaving. During your captivity, did you ever hear the name Blue Ghost? Jack and Olivia looked at each other, surprised. Yes, Jack answered slowly. Razak's men mentioned it occasionally. They seemed to fear it. We always assumed it was another rival trafficker. Who is it? Olivia asked. Santoso and Dawson exchanged cautious glances. That's classified for now, Dawson replied, but your information is extremely valuable. After the officers left, Lisa and Robert arrived with thrilling news. The American embassy plane was ready to fly them all home as soon as the doctors gave their medical clearance. I can't believe we're actually going back, Olivia murmured, tears welling in her eyes. I dreamed of this moment so many times. Your house is still waiting for you, Lisa said, carefully hugging her sister. Just as you left it, I never gave up hope. What happens when we get back? Jack asked, a shadow of unease in his voice. After 5 years, the world will have moved on without us. Robert placed a hand on his shoulder. One step at a time. We'll be with you every step of the way. That night, while Olivia slept in the adjoining room, Jack lay awake, watching the Jakarta stars. Freedom still felt like a fragile, almost unreal concept. For 5 years, every day had been a fight to keep hope alive, to remember who he was before. Could he ever be that man again? Could he and Olivia rebuild the life that had been stolen from them? The physical scars would heal, but the others, the invisible ones. His thoughts were interrupted by a text message on the phone Robert had lent him. It was from Kenji, from his room on another floor of the hospital. We survived hell. Now, let's live in heaven. Jack smiled, feeling for the first time in years that maybe, just maybe, the future could hold more than just survival. It could hold life. 3 days later, a U.S. government plane lifted off from Soekarno-Hatta International Airport, bound for Seattle. On board, Jack and Olivia Bennett watched through the window as Indonesia disappeared beneath the clouds, a place that had been their prison and was now part of their story. In the forward section of the plane, Agent Dawson reviewed a classified file. The photo on the first page showed a blue graffiti tag found on a hidden wall of the main cave on Hantu Island. The silhouette of a ship with a stylized skull. The attached report bore an unsettling title: Operation Blue Ghost, Infiltration of Southeast Asian Trafficking Networks. And on the line for undercover agent, a name had been carefully blacked out. Dawson closed the folder, locking it in his briefcase. Some secrets he knew had to remain buried, at least for now. The 18-hour transcontinental flight provided Jack and Olivia a strange limbo between their past as captives and their future as survivors. In the privacy of the government jet, they drifted between restless sleep, whispered conversations, and long stretches of quiet contemplation. "Do you remember our last day in Seattle?" Olivia asked during one of those talks, her head resting on Jack's shoulder. "It was snowing lightly. We left the Christmas lights on because we thought we'd be back in 3 weeks." Jack smiled wistfully. "And I asked the neighbor to water your orchids." He paused, the sheer weight of the lost time settling on him. "I wonder if any of them made it." "Lisa says the house is exactly as we left it," Olivia replied, "though I'm guessing without fresh milk in the fridge." The small joke was a victory. The first time since their rescue they could speak of the past with something approaching humor. Across the aisle, Lisa was asleep, her head on Robert's shoulder, the emotional exhaustion of the last few days finally having caught up to her. Robert, however, was awake, discreetly watching his brother-in-law and his wife. As a clinical psychologist specializing in trauma, he understood that for the Bennetts, the real challenge was just beginning. "He's watching us," Jack whispered, noticing Robert's gaze. "They're worried," Olivia said softly. "And they're right to be." Jack looked at her, and she continued, "We're going to need help, Jack. A lot of it. We can't just go back and pretend these 5 years didn't happen." "I know," he admitted, his fingers tightening around hers. "But we're alive. We're together. We've already done the impossible." Dawn found them flying over the west coast of the United States. The pilot announced they would be landing in Seattle in about an hour. Jack and Olivia moved to the window, watching the snow-capped mountains and green forests emerge from the clouds. "Home," Olivia murmured, a single tear tracing a path down her cheek. The military airfield in Seattle had been cordoned off to ensure the Bennett's privacy. Only a small group of officials, medical staff, and close family waited on the tarmac as the jet touched down smoothly. "Are you ready?" Dawson asked as the plane taxied to a halt. Jack and Olivia looked at each other, communicating without words as they had learned to do in captivity. They nodded in unison. As the plane door opened, the cool Seattle air hit them with an overwhelming familiarity. Jack breathed in deeply, instantly recognizing the unique scent of his home city, a mix of sea salt, pine, and distant coffee. They descended the stairs slowly, Jack leaning lightly on a cane the doctors had provided. At the bottom of the stairs, Olivia's parents were waiting, visibly aged by the stress and worry of the last 5 years. "Olivia!" Her mother, Martha Weber, let out a heart-wrenching cry that shattered the official protocol. She ran to her daughter, wrapping her in an embrace that seemed to try and make up for 5 years of absence. Thomas Weber, more restrained but equally emotional, hugged Jack tightly, murmuring words of welcome choked with emotion. My baby girl," Martha repeated through her sobs, cupping her daughter's gaunt face in her hands, as if to confirm she was real. Jack's own parents had passed away years before the trip, but his younger brother Michael was there. At first, Jack didn't recognize him. The teenager he'd left behind had become a man. "Mike?" Jack said, his voice thick with disbelief. Welcome home, brother, Michael replied, hugging him carefully, mindful of his injuries. After the initial reunions, the Bennetts were discreetly escorted to a private area, to a private wing of the airport where a medical team would conduct preliminary evaluations before allowing them to return home. The press has been speculating ever since news of the rescue leaked, Dawson explained as they walked down an isolated corridor. We've kept the details confidential, but eventually they'll want to speak with you. We're not ready for that, Jack replied firmly. And you don't have to be, Robert assured him. Your privacy will be protected. In the medical room, as doctors examined them, Olivia gazed out the window at the distant Seattle skyline. It's like nothing has changed, she commented. And yet, everything is different, Jack answered from the adjacent cot. The doctors confirmed they would both need ongoing treatment for a full recovery: physical, nutritional, and psychological therapy. They were given a schedule of appointments and medications with each aspect of their recovery patiently explained. When can we go home? Olivia asked, the fatigue heavy in her voice. Right now, if you wish, the lead physician replied, but you must understand, your recovery will be gradual. Don't expect too much of yourselves in the first few days. 2 hours later, a vehicle with tinted windows pulled up in front of a modest Victorian house in the Queen Anne neighborhood. Jack took in the blue facade, the white-trimmed windows, the small front garden where spring flowers were just beginning to timidly bloom. It's like something out of a dream, he murmured as Robert helped him from the car. Lisa had gone ahead to prepare the house, turn on the heat, and ensure everything was ready. When she opened the front door, the familiar scent of home welcomed them like an embrace. Welcome home, she said, holding the door as Jack and Olivia crossed the threshold they had last crossed 5 years ago, believing they would be back in less than a month. The interior was exactly as they remembered it, frozen in time, a capsule of their former lives. The photographs on the walls, the books on the shelves, even Olivia's favorite mug in the sink, washed and waiting to be used again. It's overwhelming, Olivia admitted, her eyes scanning the living room. Take your time, Robert advised. You don't have to process it all at once. Olivia's parents and Jack's brother stayed for a while, helping to arrange the few belongings they had brought with them. Eventually, sensing the Bennetts needed space, they said their goodbyes, promising to return the next day. We'll be at a hotel just 10 minutes away, Marta assured them, reluctant to leave her newly recovered daughter. And we'll stay in the guest room tonight, Lisa added, just in case you need anything. When they were finally alone in their bedroom, Jack and Olivia stood for a long moment, gazing at the bed they had shared for years before their disappearance. The sheets were clean and fresh. Lisa had thought of every detail. It's strange, Jack said. Part of me feels like we never left, like we could just pick up where we left off, and another part knows that those people don't exist anymore. Olivia nodded, understanding completely. We'll have to get to know each other again. Do you think we can? He asked, the vulnerability clear in his voice. I don't know, she answered honestly, but I want to try. They lay down together, fully clothed on top of the covers, simply holding each other as the familiar Seattle light filtered through the curtains. It wasn't a solution, not even a true beginning, but it was a moment of peace in the storm of their return. The following days fell into a carefully structured routine. Medical visits in the mornings, therapy sessions in the afternoons, brief meetings with Agent Dawson to fill in details of the case. The nights were the hardest. They both suffered from recurring nightmares that left them trembling and disoriented. A week after their return, while sifting through years of accumulated mail, Olivia found a letter that caught her attention. The sender was the University of Washington, where she had worked as an adjunct professor before the trip to Bali. They're offering me my old position back, she said in disbelief, reading the carefully worded letter from the dean. Apparently, Lisa informed them of our rescue before the press found out. Jack smiled, the first glimmer of his old smile reaching his eyes. Do you want to go back to teaching? I don't know. Maybe eventually. She folded the letter thoughtfully. And you? Have you thought about photography? Jack had been a respected documentary photographer before he disappeared. His camera, lost on that fateful day in Bali, had been an extension of himself. I'm not sure I have the same stories to tell, he admitted, but maybe I have new ones. That afternoon, while looking through Jack's studio, they found his backup camera in a drawer. The battery was dead, but it otherwise seemed functional. Jack held it in his hands, reacquainting himself with its weight and texture. There's something you should know, he said suddenly. Something I haven't told Dawson or the others. Olivia looked at him, waiting. During the last year on the island before Kenji arrived, I had a chance to escape. One of the guards fell asleep. He left the key to the cuffs within reach. Why didn't you? She asked, though she suspected the answer. Because they kept us separated. To escape meant leaving you behind. Jack swallowed hard. And I promised we would come back together. Or not at all. Olivia took his face in her hands. Do you know why I held on all those years? Because every night before I fell asleep, I imagined this moment, us in our home starting over. They kissed softly, a kiss that held both the fragility and the strength of their bond. Tomorrow, Jack decided, I'll take some pictures, nothing ambitious, just life. Our garden, the street, you. And I'll start writing, Olivia replied, not to publish but to process. Our story deserves to be told, even if it's only for us. 3 months later, Jack Bennett stood by a window in a downtown Seattle art gallery, watching visitors contemplate his new exhibition titled simply Return. The photographs, a mix of Seattle cityscapes and intimate portraits of Olivia and other survivors who had agreed to participate, told a story of loss and rediscovery without need for explicit words. Olivia, now with a few pounds regained and her hair healthy again, approached him with 2 glasses of water. They still couldn't tolerate alcohol well, another reminder of their captivity. It's beautiful, Jack, she said, watching the crowd that filled the gallery. You've managed to capture exactly how it feels. He nodded, taking her hand. I couldn't have done it without you. Among the attendees, they spotted Dawson. He had informed them the week before that the operation to dismantle the trafficking network associated with RASAC was continuing to expand, with arrests in 5 different countries. There's something you should know, he had told them on his last official visit. The Blue Ghost was an undercover agent who had been embedded in the organization for years. In fact, he was the one who left the ring on Guntur's boat, trying to create a rescue path without compromising his identity. This revelation had brought them a measure of peace to know that even in their darkest moments, someone had been working to free them. Ready to go? Lisa asked, walking over with Robert. The event had been emotionally draining for everyone. Just one more moment, Jack requested. He walked toward the central photograph of the exhibition, the only one that didn't show Seattle or any portraits. It was a simple image of the sunrise over the ocean taken from the deck of the ship that had brought them back to civilization. The golden light emerging from the darkness, reflecting on waters that had been both a prison and a path to freedom. Beneath the photograph, a small plaque held the only words in the entire exhibition. A sentence Olivia had written in her recovery journal. We are not who we were, nor are we yet who we will be. But today, in this moment between past and future, we simply are. And that is enough. Jack gently touched the plaque, feeling it perfectly captured their journey. Then he returned to Olivia, Lisa, and Robert, ready to continue the long road back to a life that would never be the same, but that, day by day, was becoming their own again. As they stepped out onto the Seattle streets, where a light rain fell like a blessing on the city they had feared they would never see again, Jack and Olivia walked hand in hand. Each step was a small victory, each moment an affirmation that the most important story was not that of their captivity but of their return. And somewhere in the vast Indian Ocean, Isla Hantu remained beneath the stars, its secrets now exposed, its power over them finally broken. It was no longer a place of nightmares, but simply a closed chapter in the story of two people who had discovered that sometimes the real journey begins when you finally come home.